Alright, so yesterday, the Sunqua Peak, a new fractal came to the game. I'm going to be doing two videos on this. One of them, this video, is to do with the gameplay, the experience of actually running through, fighting the bosses, what the challenge mode looks like, and in general, how I beat it. You'll be able to watch all that footage. The other video will be talking about the story, the hidden notes, and speculations as to what this means, how that might tie into Cantha. So that's my idea. What I'm going to open up with here is my group's run through the 15-minute achievement. So for this fractal, in order to unlock the CM, you had to complete a selection of other achievements. One of them meant beating the fractal at scale 100 in under quarter of an hour. An achievement I really like, actually, because it gets people into the mindset of playing these fast, which is what most people do if they end up regularly in fractals, and that it just demonstrates the fractal's not overly long. Yeah, it has some stop-start sections, which as a regular fractal player can be super annoying, but for the really regular of us, we'll just be doing CM anyway and skipping all the rest. So, in general, I do think it's been a very worthwhile addition to the game. There are some kinks in it, particularly for normal mode, which we'll get to right about now. Now, opening up here, I want to be clear, this footage is not me successfully beating the 15-minute run. While I could show you that, the problem with that is the main way to do it is to skip a lot of the trash mobs, and with that you get less of a tour of what's going on. I'll give you guys the key facts though, but skipping the early stuff is really the main way to do this. You'd think it's like optimizing the boss fights and stuff, but actually the biggest time saves are in all the other sections. Again, with the dialogue, I'll have another video on that coming forwards. So we open up with, if you remember this bit of concept art the devs gave us, what they called the moving platforms. You've already seen us go through the winding path and the starting precipice, for what it's worth. Now, the moving platforms I was really excited about. In Raiding and Living World, we've seen them do this awesome stuff with weird, moving, floating islands now that have proper collision you can travel around on, even fight on. And Fractals hadn't really seen that. So, what did they go with? Well, unfortunately, it's not really a big mechanic. So, what we're doing is a bit of a jumping puzzle sequence where we kill air elementals. The air elementals drop little orbs that you can collect and stack up to 3 in strength. And the more orbs you have, if you go all the way up to 3, they make your jump stronger. You'll notice here I'm not using a special action, and I'm not doing anything special. I'm just pressing space. But we now have this super jump, which is really, really nice. This is kind of the ultimate smooth implementation of these Zephyrite jump crystals we got way back in Season 1. So this is smooth, and I want to see this elsewhere come into the game. So here I'm about to make a mistake. I'm about to become like that Char in the trailer. So the game here is that the stacks run out, and this is one of our earlier runs, so I'm still getting to grips with this stuff. You need to watch that closely. You only get them for about 15 seconds, and if you're not moving and killing air elementals regularly enough, or picking up the orbs regularly enough, you'll lose all your stacks, and the next time you go for a jump, you're gonna fall. Just like this. So that's the idea. The idea of the stacks running out, like timing out, and you've got to watch it closely, I thought was going to appear in the final boss. Remember, the whole way that this fractal is set up is to teach you mechanics for the last encounter, but this like drop-off thing only really exists here. Now, if you're going for the 15-minute achievement, the best thing you can actually do is kill the first elemental, and with the initial 2 stacks you get, you can do the whole puzzle. So why was this called the moving platforms? Well, funnily enough, when the first player beats this, all of these platforms do move. They kind of drift together, creating a much more simple staircase to walk up. It like rebuilds the staircase here, brings peace to the mountain, as the devs were talking about pre-release. So that's the idea, and you can stand on them and they move, and it's all very cool, but there's no actual interaction or mechanic there. Moving on now, we get the first boss. This is the voice of the mountain. Extremely simple boss. Possibly one of the most simple bosses I've ever experienced in Guild Wars 2. There is no break bar, no real animations or anything to speak of through most of it. So here we are, just hitting it through to 66% when this first phase spawns. And so 2 things are happening here. First, these big red rings. All the members of the team are being followed by these red telegraphs. There's a delay, and then they strike. So if you're constantly moving, you will not be hit. This is lightning that does lots of damage and incapacitates you. So what this really means is don't follow another ally of yours. You've got 5 people in this limited arena, and really what you want to do is be spread out. which is fine because that helps you deal with the other mechanic, which kind of wants you to be spread out as well. And it's these rain clouds and these upwards arrows. Same as we were climbing the stairs, you're going to grab 3 little orbs, which are now just kind of spawning around in the area. When you have 3, you'll be able to jump high enough into the storm clouds in the sky. So, watching how this plays out here, I'm trying to get the orbs, and you'll see I'm kind of overlapping with a friend, so we're taking lots of damage. And I only got 2 orbs because the orbs spawn in clusters of 3. So, because I was kind of overlapped with another player, I only got 2, they got 1, and it was kind of awkward. But there you see, I jumped up, dissipated the last cloud, I was the last one to do one, and then we get to start fighting again. You'll also notice that when I jumped, I didn't jump on the arrow. The arrow isn't like a jump pad. It's just telling you go up here, so you can actually jump from quite far away. And that's really useful for another one of the achievements. That exact mechanic is going to reappear. By the way, it phases at 33% health here, and the same thing happens, but you can overburn. You'll see we actually got the boss lower than that. This mechanic is going to appear in the final boss, and one of the achievements is to do it really, really, really fast. Now, a little tip for you guys in doing it really fast is making sure you do start your jump from far away so that you're falling quicker after you get the cloud, and you can move on. In any case, there you go. You just do that twice. Once at 66, one at 33. And the only real trick here at scale 100 is the last phase, the lightning strikes will come back. Now, when I haven't been playing warrior for all of these runs. When I've been playing support, I like to just kind of spam heals and stuff. If you're using Tempest support, which again I still recommend is the ultimate fractal carry, you can like pop a rebound and stuff, and you can, if you've got a bit of damage, you can just push through and get him to 1%. Otherwise, you can be a little bit slow. So here, unfortunately, you've missed a really minor animation because I GG'd because I was dead, and that respawned me in the next area. But basically, that wind elemental creates an updraft that you walk in and it rockets you here. It's pretty cool, but nothing too crazy. So this next sequence is another running section in which you kill these sprites. The sprites have loads of knockback. Stability's good here. Also, your own CC is good because they all have break bars. And there's these waterfalls. If you look closely at the waterfall, you see these white streaks in it right now, and now the white streaks have gone. If you walk into the waterfall while the white streaks are there, that's like rushing water that will knock you over the cliff. And it's subtle, but sometimes the white streaks go away. So right now I can't cross. My friend tries and gets knocked, but is using Reaper Shard too. And here, the white... I kind of go really early on that, to be honest. But then when the white streaks turn off, you are safe to travel through. I tell you, it took a long time for me to realize that that was the mechanic here. We were just kind of trying to brute force, and some of us were getting lucky and some weren't, and we never quite knew why. But yeah, that's the idea there. So what we're doing is running along this path, speaking to spirits, lost water spirits that are scared and consoling them. And they look like skimmers, by the way. So in the trailer, we were complimenting the reuse of the jackal. There's actually skimmer reuse going on here as well. So pretty smart. And you see my friend in the background there speaks to the skimmer. It flies off. You do not have to fight any of these sprites. If you're going for the 15-minute achievement properly, this is one of the big time save areas because just one player can run along with a bit of invis, a bit of stability, whatever, a blink maybe to get through the waterfalls, the rushing waters, and you can just charge through, speaking to the skimmers. When you get to the next boss, which is just waiting, everyone can GG. You see, as I did here, it's just going to move me up that little staircase we're literally looking at, so we don't really miss anything. There you go. And then you can go to the boss, so one player can kind of carry you through that. If you miss the skimmer spirits en route, you're going to get here and find you can't pass, so do speak to them. So here's the next encounter. Now, to be honest, I'm not very impressed with this boss. I get that it's like meant to be a tutorial kind of thing, but it's really, really shoddy. So there's 3 things going on here. First of all, those orange AoEs, that's water damage that's going to come splashing in. It's not a massive threat, you don't have to worry very much, but yes, water damage will splash on you in the final fight. There's another mechanic that appears in this fight to do with a tether that will appear in the final boss, but you can pretty much ignore here, and you can almost ignore later as well, which is a real shame. Because this fight's going to go so fast, I'll talk to you more about the tether later. And then finally, our main objective is this. There's this water spirit stuck in these rocks, and all we have to do... Now, in our very, very first runs, we were spreading out all over the rock and, you know, taking our time, and it was kind of cool. I like the idea of fighting a big environment object that's going to break. But now you notice we are all just standing in one spot, just using our abilities, and it breaks in mere moments. I mean, it's really a very, very, very short little sequence there. So, a bit unfortunate. So here, the skimmer's going to move over, give us like a little water geyser that pushes up onto this cliff, or you can GG. It wasn't much of a time save, and again, this was like an earlier attempt at the 15-minute achievement, but really, you should just ignore the enemies. So we move into the fire area. This place, you do actually have to do a bit of fighting in the 15 minutes. So, there's these lava elementals, and you'll notice there's a wall on my left that I can't travel through. That will break once the lava elementals die. Now, these lava elementals have an explode and burn attack when they die, but also kind of a vanilla ability, which is they spit projectiles at you that when the projectiles land, they make more lava elementals. You do not have to kill the newly spawned ones, just the initial ones. And also, if you use reflects, you can get the lava elementals on your own side, which is kind of funny, honestly. This second wall you can skip, but you'll notice I successfully made the jump. That was my first time ever. Someone in Discord had said that you could. But only 2 of us made it. That jump's actually really fiddly. And in truth, I don't recommend that jump. I actually think you guys should just kill the lava elementals. Now, you notice in our comp here, we do not have a chrono or a mesmer of any form, so we don't have temporal curtain. We also don't have a guardian of any form, so we don't have guardian greatsword 5. And our necromancer isn't using spectral grasp. So we're not really using any of the biggest pull together mechanics, which could have just balled the lava elementals up, and then, you know, we could have just nuked them down. But that is the fastest way to do it. Skipping the middle wall is, like, cool, I guess, but you have to fight through the first, as far as I can tell, and you have to fight through the second, so hey. Moving on, we get the next boss. This is the Flame Stalker, the Fire Stalker, the Fury of the Mountain. Oh, by the way, you'll also notice on this run, this was right before the first reset. You see, it's 9 o'clock at night for me, a couple of hours after the Fractal was out. I didn't get into it straight away. But the instabs meant that the enemies here have lots of protection on them. So we were trying to rip it with our Necro, which wasn't ideal, but it means that what you're looking at here, the enemies are a bit tankier than they otherwise would be. So, the Fury of the Mountain, as a Stalker, does move around. Be a little bit careful with AoEs. Also, if you don't jump into this arena, you can actually fall down into the lava and die. I did have another run I really wanted to show you guys, but I died, so you didn't get to see the fight. And this time, our Reaper is dead. So, yeah, that's just from falling. The other 2 arenas, you can just hold the W key and fall into, and everything's fine. But in this one, if you hold W, you're going to fall in and die in the lava. So here we get what I think of as a Monster Hunter mechanic. The Final Fantasy Behemoth fight in Monster Hunter did this. These meteors are going to land, and then after the meteors land, you'll see, I was tabbed out for a second here, I think, on this one. You're meant to run behind the meteors themselves to defend yourself from this giant flame nuke. We'll see more of that as this video goes along, so don't worry. I actually felt like I was behind the meteor there, but I got hit anyway. That's probably just because of North America latency, as I actually live in the EU. So yeah, that's the idea, and they change it up a little bit as well at the 33% phase on this, where the meteors actually attach to the players. Which, if you're not doing challenge mode, this is the only time you'll ever see this, but in challenge mode, this comes back, and we'll be talking about that. But here you can see as I move, there's a meteor with me. I think the devs could have really done a lot with this, a lot. So there, did you see how I double dodged? Now, the telegraph on those meteors landing is like these cascading out concentric circles that slowly dissolve. And so you might think that if you're on the furthest out circle that you can hardly even see as a telegraph, you're not really going to take any damage or nothing's going to happen. But the thing is, on impact, as the meteor lands, it will apply a big stack of burning to you, even if you're on that most outer ring. So that's why I was kind of like dodging extra. Try to stay out of all the rings. Then obviously once the meteors land, there's these shockwaves, and you can you dodge into the shockwaves like a Tequatl tidal wave kind of mechanic. Well, not the Tequatl tidal wave, just a regular Tequatl wave. And you'll be alright. The trick will be later when there's a lot of those meteors. I love that mechanic. I think it's really good. And I think it's the return of that mechanic in challenge mode that people struggle with more than most things in this fight. We'll get to that in a moment. The rest of the boss, there's a break bar. That's it, really. There's nothing else going on. That guy's probably my favorite mini-boss that they did. I know, and that's the last one, by the way. I know there's 4 elements, but we're not actually going to fight an Earth element-themed encounter. Maybe you can consider the water one to be Earth and water, because the rocks are crushing the water spirit or something. But that's definitely a water fight. There's water splashing everywhere. Yeah, the fire one's probably my favorite, probably just because I'm predisposed to enjoy that stuff. But I think the tech they're using there has some really nice applications. I think it's a really pretty arena and so on. So you'll notice a lot of the mechanics we've experienced so far while we wait for this story to go through are kind of AoE-oriented mechanics that pressure you a lot in the small arenas. The final boss is actually going to give you a really big arena. That means even when these mechanics come back, they're a little bit more doable, particularly in normal mode. So yeah, we were in a little bit of a graveyard there. This is a clunky bit, I think, of the Fractal, in that there's a lot of dialogue where you're standing and waiting. And then we just come here for a bit more dialogue and a bit more standing and waiting. And I mean, it's pretty, okay? Don't get me wrong, I like it. And on the first playthrough, this was certainly nice. But I feel like there's something about the flow of this fractal that doesn't work. Just with this extra little wait for this lifting up bridge. You remember on the original concept art, that looked like that was going to be a whole sequence, you know, with the raising stones or whatever it was called. But it makes me think of that basalt stone formation in Ireland. Is it basalt? I can't remember. Anyway, that was not a thing in the end, so you just kind of walk through. And now here we are with the final boss. So lots to talk about. First of all, she does this rush away thing, where then she has this break bar appear. One of these break bars was bugged. If you break this break bar, I don't think you can get the next one, which means that you can kind of make a choice which break bar you go for. But standing her on the edge, I don't really think is that useful. Returning to her rush animation here, you'll see as she moves, she sends these projectiles out on her left and right. So those change based on what elemental phase she's in. We're in air at the moment, she'll go through fire and so on. And they can do a lot of damage. So as she's rushing, try not to stand in front of her so she doesn't just barrel you down. And try to dodge as she moves, you know. That's when she's going in or out. So here she's got these like little cone-shaped attacks that you can just sidestep. And here, you see this red animation here? What she's basically doing is the Lieutenant Kohler Ghosts of Ascalon thing. She's spinning in place like a Thief Dagger Storm and doing epic damage around her. The devs actually give you this big, dark red telegraph, probably the scariest telegraph in the encounter, just so that you really know to stay away from this. Now, if we hadn't broken the previous break bar, we could break this one. And really, I think it's better. I don't know. It's obviously day one. I feel like it's more useful to have her stunned and interrupt this big attack so you can stay hitting her and then move from there. You might wonder why this fight is only one break bar or another. And I think it's because they're doing a different thing where this is like a more animation-based fight rather than HP threshold-based fight. But you definitely do need to get her to lower healths to trigger new elemental phases. So with that thoroughly demonstrated, and sometimes, by the way, she'll do that at the sides, in the challenge mode and so on. She's going to dash away, dash back in, and, well, we get the rain cloud mechanic again. So this is what you need to do as a whole team in just 10 seconds in order to get the achievement to unlock the challenge mode, or one of the achievements. So here you'll see we're just kind of running all over the place. Now that giant vortex in the center actually pushes you away at the start of the phase. So if you are assigning an area for each other, as you can see on my minimap, you can see everyone's got like a dot on the minimap. If you're doing that, make sure you're standing slightly in that quadrant, right about 80% health, so that when the vortex appears, it pushes you away into the right place. Otherwise, you'll get pushed into the wrong place, kind of like I was. So here, I do want to show you a success. This is me successfully getting the achievement. You see I'm running super speed. I make sure I'm in my right area, which was the east. And here's our technique. We grab the first 3 orbs, but not the first cloud. Instead, move to the cloud, and we're all moving clockwise. Move to the next one along, and you'll see I just got 2 clouds real quick. There's 8 clouds total, so 4 players do what I did, and that's it. So again, I'll just show you guys. The phase starts. You wait a bit for the orbs to appear. I super speed myself. Grab the southeast rain cloud, but not where I started, and then the south one. I grab these 2, and I'm done. You know, even before everyone else on the team. It's that simple. It's just, if someone overlaps with you and ends up stealing an orb, like we saw earlier in the first encounter in this video, all of a sudden the whole thing's broken. You can always just kill yourselves with a GG and then try again. You'll know if you've beaten the achievement because the icon will stay on your buff bar for the rest of the fight. If you fail the achievement, that little yellow icon won't be there. Good luck. That's probably that plus the 15-minute achievement, the only challenging things to unlock the difficult mode here. Back to the original run. As we move in after that phase, you'll see she's doing this thing where she throws these orbs out that create AoEs on the outer perimeter of the fight right now. They've got red rings around them. That attack you can pretty much ignore. I never really feel like that attack matters. Here we get a break bar, which I go for with the headbutt and the mace 5. Break bars are really important on this. Really important, particularly in challenge mode. This is actually one of the most break bar heavy encounters I've ever seen. And it's even a little true for the normal mode stuff as well. So, now we're in the fire phase. You'll see the outer ring becomes all fiery. It's quite nice. She sends these meteors down. And to be honest, this is where I think the fractal starts falling apart a bit more now. Unlike the previous one with the rain clouds, that's actually a bit of a threat. This one's just kind of boring. There I demonstrate. Do you see how I deliberately, and this was deliberate, how I was specifically in the outer ring there, and yeah, I got lots of burning on me. This phase is kind of boring. Here I'm taking some free damage in the middle, but it's the same thing we saw with the Flamestalker, where it's just position yourself behind this. I feel like something else needed to be here. And now she does the rush away. We get the fireballs instead of the air ones. There, I missed my Axe 4, kind of annoying. So that whole phase is just kind of stand around. Very relaxing. If you're doing this fractal a ton of times in one day, like I did last night, it really ends up kind of boring. As a first playthrough, though, I mean, it's kind of nice. Here we have a spread out mechanic. So we all get some kind of AoE on us. You can't stand next to each other. You need to move apart. That appears in raiding a lot. That's going to appear in the CM as well. But yeah, really disappointed in that meteor phase. And we'll see a similar thing for water as well. I just feel like ArenaNet should have had it so that we can damage things or we need to collect something. You know, there should be a little bit of multitasking there because otherwise, you know, it's just there's nothing really going on. Anyway, here we get the meteor. Like, this one's kind of good because this one comes down quicker. So here I'm damaging her. I go for a dodge in the middle of all the meteors and then stand here. But, I mean, you can move away if you like as well. Also, my screen looks a bit messy here. A bit of a tip for you guys. Don't zoom your camera out all the way. If you zoom your camera out all the way, you're going to clip into the outer, like, animation of all this fire or water or whatever phase you're in, which can make it harder to see what's going on. The other thing you might like to do, too, is turn post-processing off and all that kind of stuff. The lower your settings, the easier this stuff is to play. So you cannot dodge or block or anything those AoEs that attach to you, by the way. You just have to eat the damage. It's not much if it's just one packet, but don't stand near any other people. So there you saw we broke her brake bar while she was doing the Lieutenant Cola thing. The funny thing is the red animation will still appear there, even though she was technically interrupted, if you do the interrupt really late. So yeah, I recommend going for that brake bar as best you can. Alright, so now we're into the water phase. We all get pushed away. There's water everywhere. Now, can you see this tether that's connected to me? What that's doing is stacking up this thing called the bargain, I think it is, on us. When it hits 9, or when it hits 10, actually, technically, it will one-shot you. It will kill you. So what you need to do is have another player walk into the beam. So here, look at this. If someone walks in front of that beam, they will take the beam off of the person who was originally targeted, and now they're getting the stacks. And as long as no one hits 9, you're fine. It also slows down your movement speed. So again, I feel like this could be a really interesting thing, where people are slowly getting slower, and there's like some destination you need to get to, but you can't because you've been slowed down by this packed thing. But unfortunately, there's nothing else really happening. The only other mechanic here is sometimes people will get a green circle. This only appears at the highest scales, which does a ton of damage unless everyone groups together for it. So it's one of these group together mechanics. We've seen it a few times before, even in fractals like the Shadow Observatory. Here, you see this green ring around me? Everyone needs to stand with me so that we, you know, spread the damage across the team, and now it's not that much. But what's weird is ArenaNet have added 2 mechanics here that just have us grouped together. So what does that mean? The gameplay you're looking at here, where everyone's moving, this is completely unnecessary. Just stand there. Like, literally, one of the people I was playing with mentioned this. He said this is the look at your phone phase. Because, yeah, you just don't do anything here. And all it needed was some kind of enemies or some kind of orb collection or something to add a little bit of complexity. I can imagine it being really fun with that, but it's just not there. Now, it's true, this will appear in challenge mode, where there's a bit more going on, but I don't think the challenge mode should be the be-all and end-all. I think the fractal should work on its own legs. We're not in the tutorial mini-bosses anymore. This is the boss, and you just kind of stand around. That's such a low-effort phase that you can res people from defeated there, as you saw that we did. So, not sure what to think about that. Curious what you guys think of it in the comments. The other thing about phases like that, where you can't damage to get through them quicker or anything, is while you're doing the 15-minute achievement, it's kind of frustrating because it's basically just a time gate. And again, that's why the best way to get 15 minutes is to optimize the earlier stuff and skip enemies and stuff and use stealth and stability and things to get through those encounters. So we're back to another break bar sequence here with her in the center. You can see she's obviously painting a lot of AoEs and things around, but generally standing in the middle is fine. All of this space in the arena is mostly unused for the normal mode fight. You see as she dives away now, it all looks a lot more visually noisy, but what's really just happening is the same as in the earlier phases. Her dive is triggering some sort of projectile. This time it's water themed. So just as in the fire phase, after a little while, where the meteors came back a second time, the vortex is going to come back a second time. And just as on the second route through, you could damage through it with the meteors, you can damage through this one as well. Now, we've actually just failed the 15-minute achievement. and so we can't be bothered to finish the fight, and we're actually all going to wipe now. It kind of shows how this is probably the deadliest part of the normal mode Fractal, this bit right here. So some things to know about the vortex. While you can damage the Sorrowful Spellcaster through it, it's reflecting all the projectiles, so you can only use non-projectile based damage. That means that like non-pistol based phantasms from the Mesmer are pretty good. Any kind of AoEs and ground targets are generally the way to go here. The Vortex is always pulling the team in while also splashing this water all over the place, which has got these quite pretty telegraphs, I think. So if you try and res like this here, you'll see that what's actually going to happen here is you're going to get sucked into the middle, and it's doing point blank AoE. All you need to do here, this looks super chaotic and we're going to wipe. But all you need to do is just stand still and try to not damage her. There's no enrage timers or anything like that. So if you're just going for a casual run, just stand on the outside of it and you'll be fine. Swapping over to the successful run now, you'll see, and by the way, just before all these big phases happen, she always moves to the edge and moves back in, like you saw here on the clip a second ago. So here, watch this. If you don't try and fight, you just stand there. Oh, and by the way, the Pact is back here. But again, you can just kind of stand still. So it's Vortex plus Pact plus thing, but again, there's no job to do, so everyone can just stand together and heal. You know, they've got like a lot of mechanics going on here, but there's no job to do. We're just waiting it out. Eventually the Vortex will go away. Maybe if there was a break bar in there and you had to get some kind of ranged break bar going or something, but they don't like going that deck buildy, because then there'd be certain comps that just don't have the tools to do that, so it's not ArenaNet's MO. Here you'll see we still have lava elementals that I've been healing up as well, by the way, from the previous encounter. And yeah, you just kind of beat her up after this. One more break bar once it's ended. Just be patient. You might, if you're very slow, have to do this last break bar twice. And the vortex twice. But again, look at how healthy we were during that vortex. You just stand at the side. And there you have it. That's me collecting running up the mountain, which is mostly due to skipping earlier mobs. That's it. That's normal mode. So then the Fractal will end, and there's the matter of challenge mode. So to get the challenge mode, you've got to beat all the regular achievements, and upon re-entry, as you walk up the cliff, the Harbinger can appear with the challenge mode, the mysterious astral creature, level 100. He's probably one of my favorite things in the game. I love this thing, especially from when I first saw it in Nightmare. Level 100 creature. Everyone has to consent to accepting, and now there'll be a portal. Looks like one of the Realm of Torment portals, really, doesn't it? I guess the devs just use it as a generic mist portal now. Takes you right to the end immediately, and you get to do the fight. So we skip all the other waffly stuff. This is actually kind of 2 fights in one, and you do get a checkpoint between the 2 of them. The most special thing about this, and the big surprise in terms of gameplay, is that you're going to beat her and you think, oh, that was really easy. Or you might actually struggle on the first phase of her, to be honest, this one here. And you'll beat her, and then you find out that, no, that's just half the fight. There's a whole other fight to do. On the opener, we get splashed with weakness here. A little bit of Condi Cleanse is nice. She'll move to the side as before, with a break bar as before. If you don't break it, you're going to have all these hazards to deal with that she flings across the arena. Very easy to tank through. You'll see everyone's very, very healthy. We all have an awful lot of boons here. So here we get 2 mechanics at once. First, if you look at the outer ring of the arena, she did that thing where she threw the lightning out to the edges. It created these hostile zones that in normal mode, we could just ignore really easily, right? Like, why would they ever be a problem? And you'll see that they actually have arrows. They're all going to rush back into the middle. If you just stand on the boss trying to hit her, they'll all rush in and hurt you badly, because you're going to get hit by all of them at once. The other mechanic is these big expanding AoE fields that force us all to spread out. So both of those will come together, and everyone needs to spread apart. You don't need to specify areas of the map or anything. You'll just generally get a sense for it as you play with people, even complete pugs. The telegraphs are so well made, you'll very naturally move away from each other. And then once you return, you have an opportunity to break her break bar. So if you get out of that mechanic comfortably, you can break the bar, get some good damage. And you'll notice the fight is playing out very similar to normal mode here. Same thing with the lightning clouds. I'm going for the same technique as before. A little bit slower because, by the way, the footage you're watching here is my first ever run of this. So I didn't really know what was coming up. And it was all that extra little bit chaotic and scary. So here you'll see if you fail that, she's going to nuke you. You saw an expanding AoE, but we managed to get it just in time. Here she moves to the side. I give everybody a little bit of prot. I go for some break bar damage with air. The one downside with Tempest is double tapping the shocking aura for CC is kind of slow. The zipper is kind of slow. The water tidal wave is kind of slow. They're all on a bit of a delay. So using consumable items tends to be better, and I'll be talking about those a lot in just a moment. Same thing here again. We're still in the air phase because she's still quite healthy. We all spread out. She's got the point-blank things in front of her. You'll notice a lot more of the field is being littered with dangerous areas now. But none of them are that deadly. Even if you get caught in some of them, like here in this spread-out phase, you see how there's some sitting around? Even if you get caught in them, they're not that bad. And like here as well, there's loads of stuff around, but you notice that ArenaNet didn't telegraph them really red or orange. It's because they're not actually that deadly. This is more of like a visual experience than a gameplay one in a lot of ways. We get a break bar here, which we throw some stuff at, but we actually miss. And again, actually, that can be okay if she's going to move into another break bar in the center, which you can get nice and comfortably. And a big spread out mechanic. And it's the same loop over and over and over again. Here's the next break bar. It'll be the same loop until you get her to 66% health, which we're going to do here. I'm pretty sure is the threshold that they're looking for. Here, you can see I'm messing with my inventory because I'm realizing that we're going to have to be using some of these consumables. And I haven't done this for such a long time, I don't know really where I want to keep it. I'm also considering the fact that I'm filming with you guys. So in the fire phase, there's now 3 meteors. I think there were only 2 before. And immediately you'll see a big change here. As the first ones are landing, 3 more land. And then after that volley, there's even more that are going to land on top of some of the pre-existing places, thus destroying the old ones. Finally, to top that off, as you see, we're still doing okay. Meteors are going to attach onto players again. So I think we got kind of lucky here in the 2 players that got targeted with meteors, we were standing next to each other. So we just placed them next to each other and everyone could get away. Now that's not all. After this, she will do her big nuke attack. But one specific thing to know about the nuke attack is these meteors don't last forever and they do break, even on their own. If you're not watching closely enough where you think you might be safe, you're actually not. So can you see how these meteors here are flaming? And now there's these orange rings around them. They're going to explode. Only one meteor is safe, and it's this one, which kind of catches us all out. You see, I actually lose my singularity there. I take 10 burning. 2 of us die. So that moment right there, that catches a lot of groups out. That's probably the most challenging part, or so I hear, because to tell you the truth, you're actually going to watch us one-shot this here. Apparently that's the hardest bit of this opening fight. And again, I can kind of see why. I think that comet mechanic's really fun. Once again, we get the spread out, but it's not lightning damage now, it's fire damage, and the orbs coming into the middle are all going to be fire. These ones actually hurt really bad. Not necessarily these massive flame telegraphs that are filling the whole screen, but as she dashes the orbs in the fire phase, these ones can be really, really, really nasty. So hopefully you're used to not standing directly where she's looking, so she doesn't dash into you. And hopefully you're used to... Well, there, see, she actually rolls back. That's kind of like a staff, Ellie staff fire 4, actually, in a weird way. So here the comets come back in the middle of the fight this time, which adds even more juicy pressure. And again, watch out for the ones that are flaming. The ones that are flaming are going to break. They're going to blow up on you, which isn't good. Here we go for a rebound, in case we don't all make it, but we did. Transfusion Necromancer is not too bad here either. Unfortunately, our warrior goes down, but we will have a chance to get them up, so don't you guys worry. Go for a heal and a spread out. In a weird way, the less players you have, the easier this fight becomes, because those big spread out telegraphs, you know, are less of a problem for you. So talking about my consumables, I'm using rocks, which are ranged consumables that allow you to break the break bars from far away, and I'm using planks. The skill 2 on the plank is pretty good. By the end of all this challenge mode stuff, I'm actually going to be running a sigil of paralyzation on this support build. I'm using Eye of the Storm as well for these dash moments where you can use the super speed to rush everybody in. I do it a little bit late on this particular phase when I've chosen to talk to you all about it. But it can be nice. And for the spread out moments, it can be nice there as well. I think a lot of people just think about raw healing and don't think about the utility that movement can offer people. So what else is there to talk about on the fire phase? Well, we're just in the same loop here. I think 33 is the number that we're going for now. You'll also see that I'm just pretty much focusing on getting into fire as much as possible and throwing the heat sinks up, as our might is actually not as good as it otherwise could be. Our composition is actually a really tanky one, in that we've got a boot. That's a boon chrono. A lot of chronos play DPS now, but we're actually running a boon chrono plus this Tempest, which combined with the sand schools and stuff like that. There you go. There's the super speed real quick on that one. Can help a lot. So here you'll see as well, the fire orbs are reflectable. I had earth aura up on people, magnetic aura, and I was actually able to reflect the ones that she executed as she dashed. These ones here. So that can help people a lot. Not necessarily the offense from it, but just the defensive nature of it. So finally we're into water for challenge mode. we get pushed away. So the question is, how have they made the water mode in CM better? Well, there are now 2 green circles that are coming, but it's the same job for both of them stacked together. If one of those was a green circle and one of those was a red or orange circle, you know, getting us to spread out, I can see that. That would work. But again, we're just standing together. It's the same thing, guys. I mean, yeah, there's more damage. It's coming faster. This does hurt. Depending on the quality of your healer, and I don't mean like as a person, I mean the build. Depending on the quality of the build, you might feel there's a little bit more pressure. I think the bargains stack up faster and come quicker. They're actually tunnel visioning the same person here. Here you see I've got the bargain on me and I'm going to get knocked out. See, 9, 10 stacks and down I go. But you can res. You know, if the title bargain was an instant defeat, I could see that being much more relevant as well. But when everyone's stacked together, you're just going to res up. Super speed to everyone to move everyone in. The general loop is here. She had a break bar far away, so I tried to use the rocks. This is the first time I used consumables in a while. We're going to skip the video forward in a moment, where I've been playing a few more runs, and you'll see I'm back in my groove a bit more. Because I haven't really been playing much Guild Wars the past couple of, or a few weeks ago. Another break bar here. This will be the Lieutenant Cola situation, if we don't get it, but we get it very comfortably. Now I'm just trying to pressure however I can, keep auras going. More might, keep people topped up. So here's the dash away and back in. This is going to be the Maelstrom, which super speed is really good for running away from as well. So just as with normal mode, this bit's kind of chaotic. You don't want to fight, and it's worse in CM because you do have 2 of these green collapsing AoEs to deal with now. The pressure that's just coming from the arena is a bit higher. I would have expected the Vortex to suck people in a little bit, you know, stronger. I think that could have worked more, have more suck power, but they didn't go with that, unfortunately. That death there was from the Pact as well, which maybe I could have rebounded if it wasn't on cooldown. Also, these big splashes that are going in circles, you can dodge into them, which is quite nice. Survive the Vortex. Now, here's kind of an intense moment. You really want to get this break bar and this burn. You want to end the fight now, because otherwise you have to do a whole other Vortex. And depending on how stable your group is, you know, that can be a pretty risky proposition. We obviously suffered a defeat on the last Vortex because one of our players got pulled in and we weren't able to res. There's a big thing here in CM, which is that resing is kind of a challenge, to be honest. You don't really want to be trying to res too much. So here I'm going for this break bar as best I can. A consumable plus a skill there manages to get it with the rest of the team. And you want to end the fight here. It's totally possible. Sadly, we're a player down, and actually for most of that break bar burn, that stun duration, she had prot on her. So we don't have much damage, and she kind of gets back into her regular skills here. So one more loop through. Oh yeah, these do massive knockbacks as well. You see me getting ragdolled all over the place at this moment in the fight. I think that gets added in CM if you stand in front of her cone things. I'm very, very comfortable in this game with when there's like a splash cone, she's swinging in front of her to just stand behind. And that's probably from the days where I used to sell dungeon paths in Ara particularly. One of the bosses is like a giant risen Etin essentially that has these big sweeping attacks that you just stand behind him the whole time. That's the whole thing to learn. So don't let me understate how challenging that is. Maybe for some of you guys watching this, you'll really struggle with those cones in front of her. I don't know, to be sure. I do feel like it's a comfortable mechanic, but you never know with these things. So here I could use Aftershock to give people a little bit more protection and keep the heals up, but you can see this gives you a good sense of the pressure. And particularly with people randomly getting knocked out, if your healer is the one that gets randomly knocked out, that's going to really hurt. So maybe you want to focus on that. Maybe you're using a heal brand or you're using a druid. We actually were playing with a druid. Kind of classic. Not too many people doing that at the moment, I don't think. But we were doing that for a few runs. And so, yeah, she goes to the side. Break bar. We're now at 10%. And this will be the final burn here. So, yes, I think a lot of people at this point were probably thinking, wow, CM is not that different. It's not that hard. Bit disappointed. In fact, I think if this was it, you would have seen a lot of rage on the forums and in the general community because people who like the challenge modes feel kind of starved of them, you know. But never fear, ArenaNet had big plans in mind. We're going to be fighting the boss all over again under a similar rule set, but with the pressure amped way up. Also do consider, by the way, even for normal mode, we don't have to get her to 0%, just 1. She will phase at 1%. So if you're like dying at this last moment, really do aim for those last couple of auto attacks because you just have to get it to the last 1%. So during some story, the screen will flash. It will get very dark. this legendary doubt appears, which if you target him says attacks uncertain, be cautious. We'll talk about doubts in a moment. And kind of resurrects the boss, who now has like this darker grey to her. And the main battle begins. So starting clean here. So in this version of the fight, she'll go through like the same loop, similar things will happen, but what were her elemental abilities have become these laser beams that move along. So you'll notice many of these laser beams spawn on the outer edge of the arena, and they actually do have arrows telegraphing to you where they're going to go. So you can use that to time a dodge or something. Now these laser beams really hurt, like seriously hurt. Make sure you have fractal potions available and make sure you've got a good uptime of protection in the group. The lasers can be dodged and blocked, so you can time that as well. The only thing I would advise you don't do is don't try to like guess exactly where they'll be based on the arrow. Just have a general sense, don't stand in front of her, otherwise she'll charge you, and just try to get out as far as you can, or again, time some kind of block or dodge. I would say a good amount of this part of the fight is avoiding those laser beams. And depending on how well built your comp is, your deck is for dealing with them, can actually make this whole fight really smooth. In fact, I read a message online, some early feedback last night, of people saying that they actually thought that the Phase 1 stuff was harder than this stuff. But I would definitely say that the second half of this fight is the one we struggled on more. We had a couple of wipes on this one while we one-shot the opener. We didn't struggle on that meteor phase like we would have otherwise. So break bars are the other really big thing here. They come regularly, they're hard to get through, and consumables do help. Now, I don't know whether ArenaNet really balanced the encounter around consumables. I hope that they didn't. In fact, I really think that they should nerf the consumables because we're in a weird place with the game at the moment. I'm using just two, the wooden plank and the rock. Rock for range situations actually is very useful, especially later in this fight. And the plank just gives me a little bit more assistance. As I said, a lot of the Tempest stuff is on a bit of a delay, so having consumables is nice. There's a good example of everybody dodging through the laser beams so that they don't get chunked too bad. And so, yeah, well, you'll notice that we're kind of in the same loop as we were before. She dives to the side, she dives to the middle, then some sort of mechanical trigger. And this one is a Demon of Sorrow. They have appeared, and we need to destroy it before it can finish its deadly spell. So this will be a global nuke. And what you need to do is target the Demons of Sorrow. There I'm just throwing some heals on people who've already got the CC. You need to break their break bar. So you're watching for Sorrows and dealing with them. After Sorrows are done, Fears are going to come in. So these are a little bit like in the Nightmare Fractals, where those crate hallucinations follow you and then they explode for a ton of damage. The Fears will jump on you, knock you to the ground, do a lot of damage and hold you there. So they're kind of CCs on top. You just need to kite away from them. You can't blind them, you can't push them around or anything like that. I think they're actually invulnerable. So the idea is, you know, you're scared of the Fears, so you run away from the Fears. And 5 will spawn. I think 1 is generally following each player. But there's no fixation icon like there was in Nightmare, so not sure about that exactly. Again, on the side, really important to keep protection up, because this is just so deadly if people are in the slight wrong position. And again, if you're rezzing as she dives away, then you're liable to getting chunked by the next wave of laser beams that comes in. Spread out mechanic here is much bigger, of course. I haven't actually mentioned that. In the normal mode, they're much smaller. Now that the spread out mechanic is much larger, you're going to be getting pressured to much further away areas of the arena. I think the fact that that spread out mechanic is a lot bigger is the immediate most apparent change in the challenge mode versions. And not just here with the darkness and laser beams, but even in her first version as well. I need a way in language to differentiate between the 3 versions of the fight I'm talking about here. She also more regularly in challenge mode doesn't dash to the side in the middle, but she dashes to the side and then another area of the side, which I suppose is cool. Maybe she should be moving a bit further. ArenaNet don't often do this where there's super mobile bosses. I think that they know it's kind of annoying to established players who have had 8 years now getting used to just stacking in melee on stuff. But it does mean that certain builds and, you know, like Condi and more range stuff is a bit better, and mobility has its place. So here's a Sorrow, you see, and I throw a boulder at it straight away. Party member targets here. They call target. I take target with a simple press of a button, and then just throw the boulder. And you can get through them nice and quickly. So now that we're below 33, Guilt demons have spawned. So Guilt will do the water pact thing from before. It will, and Guilt is, like, in the story of this encounter, the biggest issue for this woman, I think. So the idea is it's going to be trying to connect the beam to her, and you need to take it from her onto your party members, but obviously still not let it get to 9 stacks and kill you. It stacks up quicker. You need to wait it out. And by the way, while Guilt's going on, there's going to be 2 Sorrows and Fears running around as well at the same time with all the laser beams. So that's the phase you just saw us dealt with there. You actually just saw me eat a fear there for a second as I got knocked down and got chunked real hard. So it's really these moments here below 33 that are the trickiest. You've got to get out of them healthy enough to get this break bar nice and quick. You can actually start doing damage. Otherwise, you're going to get caught in these horrible loops where it's just a nightmare, really. I mean, unless you go really cheesy and really tanky and just throw Condi at it forever. My main advice for the phase where everything's up at once is to have the person with the limited CC break the tether, the guild tether, and claim that for themselves, while your CC people really try to focus on getting rid of the sorrows. Fears seem like they make things more complicated, but really you're moving around a lot anyway, and the fears always spawn on a bit of a delay. So you don't have to worry about them much. You're probably just going to be running to keep away from the laser beams and stuff, or to deal with the tether, or to get to do a new CC. Just don't run directly into a fear if you can help it. I know it's a lot to focus on, but that's what Guild Wars 2 is, you know, in these really, really intense encounters. It's a lot of multitasking. Here, if you watch these laser beams, you'll see how much damage they do. They move in and back out, and look at my team. They do it twice. Everyone takes so much damage from that. And you got to think that's because we've just been forced to spread out, so people are a little bit lower on boons. They might not have all the endurance they want. One of the benefits of being Heal Tempest here is that we have Perma Vigor. And while it's not as crazy as some other fights for dodging, in that specific moment, making sure that everyone has like a double dodge available is certainly useful. Sometimes you'll notice she dives away and then comes back into the middle very quickly, so you want to stick about for those. There's no point moving. And here we go. We get the round again. So there's Gil. I break the tether here as the healer, and I get my rock ready. The Sorrow spawn moments later, so I throw a rock at the Sorrow. I use my plank on the Sorrow. I use the Water 4 on the Sorrow. Oh, actually, there I think I died to the Guilt. But me plus the Soul Beast, we managed to get that one. The other 3 members of our team dealt with the other Sorrow, and now fears are here, but we can ignore those fears. It's a kind of crazy light show, right, guys? And again, based on your settings, this can actually be really nuts. Visually, I think this is one of the most nutso fights they've ever done. It's even worse than, you know, that final 10% phase in Nightmare CM, which is also crazy. But you turn post-processing off, and it's not so bad, I would hope. What gets to me is these purple telegraphs. I don't know what purple means. Is it super deadly, or is it not? It's kind of always hard to tell. So one more break bar. Look at how regularly these are coming up. And finally, she goes down. So all in all, I actually think this CM was a little less complex than I was expecting. You know, I was thinking that the challenge mode would be, since the entire thing is one fight, there'd be more going on. To be honest, I still kind of think that the Shattered Observatory is the more worthwhile scale 100 than this. But I get that the Observatory is a part of a trilogy of other fractals, so you kind of want to keep them together and so on. I can definitely see myself doing this on the regular, especially when it's actually one of the achievements for the day. Normal mode is probably the bigger problem, I think, just because there are these long chunks of the battle that nothing much is going on, and I'm not sure whether a lot of stuff got cut. But the fractals of a good enough quality to release, for sure, and if all fractals came out at about this bar, but maybe slightly more regularly, I think I'd be very happy. So there you go, guys. I wish you the best of luck. That's my comprehensive look at all of the mechanics going on here. Join me next time for the story and what exactly this all has to do with Cantha. The story is really, really intriguing and weird and almost like poetry. So I'll see you guys for that next time.